Whether you're looking for answers to specific life questions or seeking to become the best version of you possible, welcome to the Mental Breakdown and Psychreg podcast, where we offer insight, information, and strategies based upon research and years of practice as clinical psychologists. So sit back, have a listen, and get connected with our hosts, Dr. Berney and Dr. Richard Marshall. Welcome back. Richard, we've got a very interesting topic today. And it's from an article that was published at JAMA Network. JAMA, of course, is a journal of the American Medical Association. So it's jamanetwork.com. The link's in the show notes, but this is a very long article that we would really encourage you to check out and read, because it is all about cognitive-enhancing drugs. And it's cognitive-enhancing drugs. We're really talking about medications, but I think that they call it drugs because, we call all kinds of medications drugs, but I think that the use of the word drugs often has a negative connotation. Right. And I think that they went ahead and used it here because we're really talking about the use of these medications off-label in ways that they're not necessarily prescribed for.
That's right. Each medication is designed for a specific disorder. Right. But once it's approved for one disorder, physicians are allowed to prescribe it for other things. Right.
We're going to call that off-label.
That's off-label.
Yeah, so it's so a lot of these medications are used off-label, and the ones in particular that they're talking about here are the methylphenidate medications, which include Ritalin, and this other medication called Provigil, which is a non-amphetamine-based medication, again used for wakefulness, alertness. That actually, again, we were talking about this before we started recording. It's the way that I initially learned about Provigil was that it was a medication that was designed sort of with the medical professionals in mind for people who are working those long, 24+ hour shifts, and they need to be alert and awake throughout the night, but they didn't want to take amphetamine-based medications, and so they developed this. It's modafinil is the generic, but Provigil is the trade name. And there's a new one called a newer version or adaptation of it called Nuvigil. So this study was all about those medications and their interesting use, again, off-label, to perhaps enhance cognitive skills.
Right. Yeah, they're meant for increased alertness and wakefulness. Right. For people like us who, if you work long hours, you wear down over the course of the day. And we'll drink soft drinks or we'll drink coffee and we'll rely on caffeine. And sometimes it just isn't enough. I mean, I don't know how you are with caffeine, but there's a point beyond which caffeine has no effect on me. I mean, the first cup or two of coffee will create some alertness, but 4 cups doesn't get me anywhere far anything beyond 2 cups. Right. So for people who work these long hours, and physicians are spend notoriously long hours at work, especially during residency. Right. So if you're working 16, 18, 20, or a nurse, you're doing a double shift. So you're working 16 hours. As you do that, you eventually wear down. Right. So we all know the need for, or the desire for something like this. So we create these medications for wakefulness, and suddenly we discover that you get enhanced cognitive performance when you take these medications. Right. Or that's the suspicion, that's the feeling.
Right, and of course, it's really important to be studying this because we know that there is this increased prevalence of, like, college students getting prescriptions for Adderall and Ritalin and some of those medications to help them on, during midterms and finals and things like that. We know that there are, a number of people, and in the article they talk about, chess players and, people who are engaging in deep thought types of, cognitively strenuous activities. I really like that they mention researchers, people who are in the they refer to it as publish or perish mentality of university work, where you have to work long hours because if you're not getting papers written and you're not getting these research studies done, then you will not be able to get tenure and to continue at the university. So it talked about people in these types of situations using these medications as a way to we're just going to say enhance cognitive skills, but a lot of times I think people traditionally use it just to be more alert and to be more alert and more focused. More
focused and engaged, and you can maintain your energy, your cognitive energy. You mentioned college students taking other individuals' stimulant medications. Right. We know that Adderall, for example, is being abused. And I had always thought, when you think about it, you're thinking that it's for, I'm going to take my roommate's medication, and that will keep me more alert. It'll keep me more awake. I don't have to sleep as much. I don't have to take as many breaks because now I have this medication in me that gives me extra energy. Right. Until I read this, I hadn't thought about the specific cognitive enhancements that those medications also provide. Right. And you mentioned Provigil, or there's a condition called narcolepsy, where people you're tired and you fall asleep unexpectedly. And so the medication's great for that. It keeps you awake. But then we discover that, well, actually, it enhances your cognitive performance. It doesn't just keep you awake, but it has this cognitive effect. Right. And that is also what these students are after, is that increased cognitive effect. Right. Not a generalized arousal, but actually it helps me make decisions. Yeah. It helps me organize my thinking.
Right. Well, and I think what's fascinating about it is that, people talked about it, and college students would tell you, that's why I use it, but there wasn't really any.
That's why I use it. Why?
For that enhanced cognitive, because it makes me think better. It makes me, it helps me remember the for tests and things like that. It helps me study. But there hasn't really been many studies that sort of, proactively looked at that effect. And so in this article, they talk about some studies that did just that.
And they're done in another country.
Right, in Germany.
I wonder if we could do, I'm not sure that we could, I guess we could do these studies in this country, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, you'd have to have a lot of IRB approvals. But this was done in Germany, and I love the way they set this study up. Right. Because they used chess players. Right. But they used chess players who were expert chess players. Right.
Well, they used chess players because they discovered in a survey that a bunch of chess players, well, we say a bunch. And I think that the numbers, when you look at the numbers, I think it's more than you would expect. I don't know that it's...
I was surprised.
It's not a number that's like, oh my gosh, 90% of chess players...
If you play chess, you use drugs.
Right. So it was about 10% of chess players who responded to this survey said that they have used these types of medications in the past to enhance their thinking skills and abilities
in tournaments,
during tournaments,
in competition. Yeah, so then immediately that little flag goes up.
Nobody would have ever thought about testing for doping in chess tournaments.
Right, they don't do that. No, it's not the Olympics.
It's because chess tournaments aren't usually on ESPN.
Well, and the other thing that this did is, as I'm reading this, because I did some work with Major League Baseball for performance-enhancing drugs, we talk about performance-enhancing drugs that are banned in every sport at every level. Right. These are cognitive-enhancing drugs. Right. And so you wonder about the parallels.
Well, in our work with Major League Baseball and with some of the other professional sports.
Other sports, right.
Even some of these medications that are cognitive-enhancing medications, if that's what we're calling them right now. Right. You have to go through a lot of hoops to be able to take Ritalin as a baseball player.
That's right, because these same drugs are banned in most... from college, probably from high school on, but certainly from college on. These are banned substances.
Without specific, again...
assessments and permission and knowledge. Everybody knows that you are taking these and you're tested regularly to make sure you're not taking too much or other things. Right. Yeah, so it's very these are banned in sports, but they're not banned
right
in chess and other competitions.
And my assumption is that they just probably wouldn't have even thought that they would have needed to, you know.
I think about music competitions,
right,
to professional musicians. You know, when you're competing for prize money or for acceptance into Juilliard or those very high prestige schools, are people using cognitive enhancing drugs during the competitions, right? Because they're not tested. That's
right. So they got this, but they also did a proactive study. So they call it a prospective study, where they took these expert German chess players and they were like, let's see if these medications have an effect on them. So they took the chess players, they had them compete, and they gave some of them the cognitive enhancing drug. I think it was they used Provigil, right? So they used Provigil, and the other group did not get Provigil. Surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly,
You will not be surprised to learn
that the group who took Provigil won more matches.
They won more.
Now, they said that when they lost, oftentimes they lost because of time. That they took too long to make their decisions, but usually their decisions were pretty good because they won more matches.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, chess is a game that you have to make your moves within a certain amount of time.
Right. Yeah.
There's a timer.
Most of us play chess recreationally without timers.
Right.
Thankfully, that would not be good.
Right. Wouldn't be good for me, especially.
Well, let's just get this done.
That's right.
But
you'd have a 3-second timer, right?
Let's try it. Let's go.
Okay.
Let's see how fast we can win. So what these guys would do is the group that was taking the modafinil or the Provigil, they would take longer to make their decisions, but they tended to win. Right. And so again, we have, I think, about our first real study that looked at these types of drugs as cognitive enhancers for making decisions and all. So that's really, that's a huge step. It's a huge position to be in, because now we're having discussions about what are we doing with these medications and what can we do with these medications.
And we have always worried about college students taking other people's medications. But man, if it has this kind of if it provides this sort of cognitive advantage, it's going to be very difficult to convince students that you really shouldn't be doing this, because most students are going to say it's worth the risk.
Right.
Whatever harm I might be doing, whatever risk I might be taking, it's worth it, because it gives me an advantage that I would not otherwise have.
Right. Yeah. And
that'd be a hard sell.
And this stretches to lots of other areas, because one of the things that I really like that they put in here is that one of the researchers on these studies said that their hypothesis was that while these medications may help some people, that they're probably not very effective on people who are already top performers. And they found that that's just not true.
That was the alarming part of this, because these chess players were experts. They had already achieved proficiency. Right. So they were enhancing expert performance.
They were getting better than they already were. Even though they were already the best.
Right.
And the other thing is that, again, it kind of extends out. They found that 20% of German surgeons admitted to using some of these medications.
That's right. This isn't new.
Right. So it's
among those who have access, which would be physicians who can write prescriptions, but also college students who can take each other's medications. Yeah. So if you have access, you may be doing this.
Yeah. So it's fascinating, and we don't know where this is going to go. We don't know that there's necessarily going to be this.
They call it cosmetic neurology or something.
Something like that. Yeah. But it makes me think of that movie. Did you see the movie Limitless? I'm just asking.
You always have to ask.
That's right.
Yeah. Just to embarrass me in public.
There's been a couple of sort of iterations of that movie, but basically, there's a medication you take, and it really enhances all of your abilities, primarily your thinking abilities and things like that. And who knows if this is sort of one of those steps moving in a direction to try to really maximize our cognitive skills.
I have this vague recollection of fighter pilots in World War II were given amphetamines. One of the countries gave their pilots amphetamines because they were doing long hours,
right?
And quick shifts. Like the fighter pilots in England, they would come back, they'd sleep for a couple of hours, and they're back in the air. These guys are shooting at each other while they're flying airplanes. Speaking of stress, but one of those countries, and I don't know which one it was, I think gave pilots amphetamines of some type.
That's interesting. It would make sense though.
Yeah, right.
But I think that my overall thoughts about this is that, I have a hard time believing that anything can increase your capacity more than your sort of inherent capacity.
More than you're able.
Right. I don't think
the chess players did.
I don't think it. No, the way that I think about it is that it's not that it made them better. It removed whatever additional distractors there may have been. It maybe helped them, get more focus, which maybe is why it took them longer to make the decisions. But they were able to focus in and sort of in.
Yeah, what are you really buying?
Right. I don't think it's, if we've talked before about nature versus nurture when it comes to intelligence, and you're sort of born with a capacity, and that capacity has a range. There's sort of a critical range of that you're born with, and your experiences in life determine where on that range, within that range, you fall. I don't think that you're able. I don't think we're ever going to get to a place where there's going to be a medication or something that's going to exceed that top limit that you're capable of.
Range of There's a word for that, range of reaction or something.
Yeah, something like that.
So it's not going to take you beyond your range of reaction.
Right. Yeah, because even the world's best chess players, just as an example, I'm sure that they can look back and they would say that was the best match I've ever played.
Right.
And they had that without ever taking a medication. And so maybe what these medications do is they allow more access to that focus and that drive and that motivation and everything that they had at that time.
It increases something that is already there.
Yeah, right. That's what I think.
But it's only going to increase it to their limit.
Right. Yeah, like I tell that to college students when they do talk about using some of these medications. It's not going to make you smarter.
You're not going to be able.
It's going to give you more access to
and
what's
more
already
energy.
there.
It will energize you. It will give you more cognitive horsepower, if you will. Another related question: in sports, if you use performance-enhancing drugs, you're known as a cheater.
Right.
Now in baseball, if you did steroids, whatever record you may have set, you have a little asterisk beside your name because you used performance-enhancing drugs, and you're known as a cheater. In the Olympics, people lose medals. Right. Lance Armstrong.
Yeah.
With the cycling. Is it cheating? Would the use of cognitive-enhancing drugs be considered cheating for a college student, for a physician, for a chess player?
You want my personal opinion? Is that what you're asking?
Absolutely.
My personal opinion is no.
You're not cheating.
No, because the difference is that the doping and things that we see in physical steroids and things like that that does result in a person exceeding what their body is naturally capable of. I mean, if you look at some of the pictures of some of these people that we know used, you see pictures of them before and pictures of them after, and there is a clear physical difference. I don't think that these medications give you anything more than what you already have. It just gives you more access to what you already have. During
the steroid epidemic in Major League Baseball, at one point Barry Bonds, who's been accused of, because he physically changed his body, taking steroid, he said, it doesn't increase my bat speed and it doesn't increase my eye-hand coordination.
Right.
I still have to hit. He didn't say that. One of the broadcasters said that it doesn't enhance his ability to hit a baseball.
Right.
It might increase his strength, but it doesn't increase his hitting ability.
Right.
So is it cheating?
But it does make a pitcher throw faster. It does make you would make you throw the ball farther. It does increase your swing speed, not necessarily
and strength,
and your strength. So if you're talking about the number of home runs, that would be an important.
The number of times you hit the ball probably doesn't change.
Right.
The number of times you hit the ball far may change.
And so, I think it's interesting using that as a perfect example. It doesn't change their cognitive skills. The hand-eye coordination, for example, that would be a cognitive process. It doesn't change that
or their
because
visual
that was already
abilities
there.
to see the ball and to know where it's going to be. The physics of the baseball.
Right. That cognitive aspect of it remains pretty consistent.
Right.
It's the physical aspect that changes because of the enhancement of the drugs that makes them better.
Interesting question. Yeah, would it be cheating?
It is interesting. So.
But here's the other thing, though. When we say it's not cheating, now if I'm a 19-year-old college student and I hear us say it's not cheating, we're not saying it's harmless. Are we?
Well, we don't know, and that's what the researchers said is that we don't have long-term studies that show the effect of these medications on healthy individuals.
Because we know that healthy individuals who take amphetamines can become addicted, physiologically addicted.
Right.
Less likelihood if you really have ADHD.
Right.
But if you don't, if you're healthy, normal, and you start tinkering with amphetamines, they can become highly addictive.
Absolutely.
So there is some risk involved, but we don't know what that risk is yet. We haven't done enough studies.
Right.
Okay. Fascinating area.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, but again, it's a long article. Definitely encourage you to get in there and read it because it's there's just tons of information in there. So, but
yeah, I like this one a lot. It was again a lot of new territory, new soil to be tilled. So, well worth it.
Absolutely. So, all right. Well, that's it then for today. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, don't forget to be afraid.